Oh,
Sorry, I was scrolling through Discord looking for the right channel and realized that you already told me it wasn't going to
that's
be
true.
where
I did.
I was looking.
It's okay. Well, you
But I
found it.
remembered. I
You found
remembered
it.
I'm in the right spot. We're good.
We're ready.
I have the TinBiscuit logo back up. I was having some issues with OBS last time I streamed
That's
and
okay.
had to reset everything.
Ouch.
But the TinBiscuit logo is key. I could not start
Biscuit logo is key.
officially talking about TinBiscuit type things until I had the logo up.
Right. That makes sense. Yes.
Yes.
It's important.
uh,
Are we ready to jump in or?
I think so, yeah.
All right. Well, so first of all, guys, since it's October, we did want to do something a little bit creepy, a little bit spooky. So one of our viewers last week, or last episode, I should say, or was it? I can't remember. Anyways, they recommended the idea of black-eyed children. So if you don't know what the black-eyed children are, they are usually teenagers, young teens, like 12, 13 years old to 16, 17 years old. And they have all black eyes, not just black pupils, but the eye, like everything is black. It's like they're wearing black contact lenses. And they want to be let in somewhere, like your car or your house or something. They want to be let in, and it's go
That's
ahead.
like a weird. That's like a weird way to phrase it. They want to be let in. I think it's they will ask for permission.
That's
They
true.
are basically requesting that you allow them in to wherever. It could be your house, it could be the car, like you mentioned.
Right.
They are
That's true.
requesting access to
Almost,
your
yeah, almost like a vampire of old. Like they can't come in without your permission, kind of thing. But the from the stories, I do emphasize stories because at this point there's been no confirmed sightings. From the stories, they say that if you deny them access to wherever they want to be let in somewhere, they get angry. They get angry and insistent that you let them in. So it's kind of like a little bit of both. They do request permission, but they also become insistent if you deny them that access.
Yes. So I think that's like kind of the general description or the consistent description
Right.
amongst sort of present day stories. And I guess at this point it's considered an urban legend,
Right.
really. I think that a lot of people consider it almost like a creepypasta type story. Um, and there's actually quite a bit of conjecture about whether or not it's an internet hoax or true urban legend, I guess,
Right.
or a phenomenon that people actually encounter. So it's got quite an interesting uh, history, I guess.
I agree, and I think that so if you listen to the original guy, his name is Brian Bethel. He's a journalist for some newspaper or magazine down in Texas, Abilene, Texas. If you listen to him tell his story, he genuinely seems to believe that he saw something. Now, whether or not he embellished it as, like, okay, let me try and formulate this in my mind. Something scares him, something for some reason he gets creeped out from two children asking him to give them a ride home. Okay, you know what? Let's start at the beginning. Let's go over his story. All right.
Well,
Sound good?
I wanna preface the story. So, this story is sort of the I guess what sparked the Black Eyed Children phenomenon in recent history. And so I think that's important to remember as we keep talking about this. Um, this is it was pre not pre, it was early internet days, right? So
Right.
not as information wasn't traveling as fast as it does now,
Right.
but it still was an access point or jumping off point for this legend to spread.
Mhm.
But yeah, do you want to hop into what exactly happens?
Sure. I'm not gonna give like the all the details. I'm just kind of like skim over it, just because if you want to listen to it, there's ways out there to listen to it. I think it's pretty interesting to listen to him talk about it because, like I said, he genuinely believes something was wrong. Um, so, anyways, he's sitting in a parking lot one night. It's like across from a movie theater, and he's writing out a check for his utility bills. And these two children walk up to his window and they knock on the window, and they say, "Hey, sir, can you give us a ride home? We want to go see this movie, and we left our money at our mom's house. Can you just like let us in and give us a ride home? Can you just like let us in?" And the guy's kind of thinking that's weird. He's the way he says it. He says he instinctively was almost going to let them in, but even still, like he had this overwhelming sense of dread as soon as he started talking to these kids. Um, and they just keep, like, "Hey, it's not going to take that long. We don't live very far away. Can you just let us in?" And so he locks the doors. He asks them, "Well, what movie are you trying to see?" And they say, "Oh, we want to see Mortal Kombat," right? Because that tells you what time of like what year this is. It's like
Early
mid
mid
90s.
1990s.
Um,
Yeah.
and so he notices that the the last showing of Mortal Kombat has already started. And by the time he would have gotten them in the car, gotten them to his house or to their parents' house, got the money and back, they would have only seen the very end of the movie. So there was like no point in his mind of like taking them. And like I said, he's feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. Um, and so he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not about that life. And at that point, like I said, they get kind of insistent, like, "Sir, you have to let us in. We can't come in unless you let us in." And he says that's the older child, one of the older looking child says that. He's like doing all the speaking as the older child. The younger one is just keeping quiet, and he's kind of looking like this should have worked. This always works. Kind of like a acquisitive look on his face. Um, and then Mr. Bethel says, he puts it in reverse, he drives away, and he looks back, and the children are gone. So that's like essentially the gist of it. And that's, like you said, that's what sparked this internet legend, I guess.
Mhm.
I don't, because the thing is the best way to put these, I guess you would call it an urban legend. I guess that's the best way to describe it, because it almost seems like all of the stories that are about black-eyed children are like a friend of a friend. It's like, well, I didn't
Yeah.
see them, but my friends
Someone I
did,
know.
or my
Yeah.
uncle's best friend's daughter saw them. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of where they stem from.
So I think that, again, going back to sort of this era of, made up stories, right? So when
Mhm.
you talk about something like Slenderman or any of the numerous sort of creepypastas out there, I think it's easy to sort of say, well, I mean, this looks and sounds like another made up story.
Mhm.
This guy put it out there just to see how people would react, like what kind of traction could it gain. I mean, he was a journalist, so I guess you could pause and say, well, is this the kind of story that a journalist would put out willy-nilly? Could
Mhm.
this actually tarnish his reputation? Um, but he put it out there, and he was actually really surprised by the amount of responses he got to the story
Mhm.
and the amount of people who had similar stories. And it could be a case of maybe it still was like a friend of a friend. But I think there were a lot of people who stepped up and said, hey, this is something similar to this has happened to me before.
Mhm.
And kind of showing that, well, maybe this is something that isn't just made up for likes or shares. Maybe
Right.
this is a legitimate phenomenon that people are experiencing.
Right. And I think that, I mean, there's always similarities between, obviously there's always similarities, but there's there's always going to be those stories that are too fantastical. They're too uh they're like either too similar, or they're talking about something totally different, or they just sound completely and totally made up and don't like really fit the criteria, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mhm.
um and I've heard him say that he a lot of stories that he reads, or people talk to him about, if they see him on the street or whatever, that they just kind of feel like he feels like this is just a joke. Like, they must think this is a joke because this is not
Mhm.
like this doesn't fit. um I don't know. I think that it's okay. So I
Yes.
tend I tend to think that this could be possible, question mark.
Mhm.
um Mainly just because I think there's things out there that we haven't discovered yet. That's why I also believe in Bigfoot, but that's another story. um so like, I do believe that this is possible. However, I also think that there's people that want to be like part of the fad. And that's where a lot of the stories come from. What do you think?
So when I was starting to do research on this topic, I felt like everything I was seeing was very like topical information, I guess. Like that didn't have a lot of depth to it. And I think part of that did stem from the initial like outbursts of all of these black-eyed children's stories that sort of originated from what was his name? Bethel.
Mm-hmm.
Originated from Brian Bethel's post in the mid 90s.
Right.
So it was really like you would either, hear people's stories or you would just get a basic description of, oh, black-eyed children come to your door and want to be let in, or show
Right.
up at your car and want to be let in. Um, what I started to find though, I found this man, his name is David Weatherly. And I don't know if you came across any of his research, but there are a couple of actually quite a few of podcast type shows on YouTube where he was interviewed, but he actually wrote a book about the black-eyed children.
Okay.
And so that's when I started to get more information about, well, maybe it's not just this internet sensation. Maybe there's more to it.
Hmm.
And to me, that's when I started thinking, oh, maybe there is something to this. Maybe it sounded like more plausible to me then to
Right.
hear this guy who he had done research on obviously everything after that initial mid 90s post, but he was making connections to past cases uh, of people telling similar stories.
Hmm.
And so I don't, I think it's a big question. I don't know if I can say that I really like do or don't believe in most of the things we talk about.
Okay.
I don't know that maybe that's kind of like a bad answer, but I think that after seeing that there's more of a historical connection to these things that have been happening and past accounts
Hmm.
of the black-eyed children, I would definitely say I think it's more plausible than I initially thought.
Okay. So first of all, first of all, I would like to go on record and say I enjoy that you're more of like the skeptic of the two,
Mhm.
because I tend to lean more towards like this could really be happening. This is some legit stuff, and it's creepy, and I don't like it. Um,
Mhm.
so I think it creates this good dynamic between the two of us. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're absolutely right. If you type in black eyed kids in Google, you will get like page after page after page of just the most general like description of what happens. They want to be
Yeah.
let in, they have black eyes, sometimes they're wearing modern
Because they're
clothes,
great.
sometimes like sometimes they're not wearing modern clothes. Like it's the most general thing ever.
Yeah.
And not only that, but they go on, usually these web pages will go on to like try and explain it away. Like, oh, you can just buy black contacts online for $20. And it's like, cool, great. I'm glad that we can establish that in 2019, but we're talking, you know, 20 years ago, 30 years
When
ago.
those lenses, those sclera lenses were super expensive.
Exactly.
Like,
And for
yeah.
as many stories as, pop up, granted some of them can be explained away as fake, a hoax, but if even a third of the amount of stories that come in are this is what I really truly 100% believe happened, there's no way that little 12-year-old kids are getting their parents to buy them black contacts. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that David Weatherly talks about is, all of these skeptics and it's like, okay, well, even if they did get their hands on these contacts, well, that doesn't explain, you know, ho I don't know, how did apparently, like, the kids are never recognized, right? So, like, if you're in a
Right.
small town, usually you would recognize the people who live there, and especially kids, right? Because kids aren't gonna so, like, okay, so you have this in your mind, well, maybe the kid drove to another town to pull this prank. So he got contacts, expensive contacts, and he drove to another town. And then it's like, okay, well, kids can't drive. Oh, well, then his, an older sibling drove him to this other town to pull a prank with these expensive
Right.
contact
Yeah.
lenses. And so, like, the story gets more and more, not that I'm saying that it couldn't happen, because I'm sure, like, kids love to pull pranks. But like you said, even if a fraction of the stories were still true and legitimate, like that's still a good number of stories and occurrences that are, happening around this urban legend.
Right. And another thing that I've noticed with a lot of these stories is that none of them, not none of them, I won't say none of them, I'll say a good chunk tend to, they don't tend to take place in well populated areas or like, it's not usually during the day that this happens. It's like at night or like in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of stories where people talk about seeing black-eyed children on like a farm, you know, or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they're like not in the woods, but they're like out in the boonies. That's where they live, and they have like a good chunk of land, but they're seeing these kids at like the edge of their land. And yeah, you know, kids could show up and they could get, I mean, I don't know. I had older siblings and there's no way that they would have taken me to the next town over.
I don't know, they got better things to do than help
Right.
their, like, little sibling pull a prank, and
Right.
then,
Like,
like,
it's gonna be
not only
really
do they have to
funny.
drive yeah, not only do they have to drive them there, then they have to pick them up.
Right.
Like
No, there's no way. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's like these aren't happening, and I think that goes along with like aliens. Like aliens never seem to happen. Like they never seem to abduct anybody in like a well-populated area. It's always like
Mhm.
in the middle of nowhere in Russia, at some Air Force base or whatever. It's like it never happens anywhere of substance.
Well, why would aliens abduct someone in the middle of the city where everyone can see them? It only makes sense that it would happen
Hey,
in a sparsely populated
hey, I
area.
get it. I get it. I'm with you. I I believe in aliens too, but that, again, that's another story. Um, but like I'm saying, it's like it's never occurring in the well-populated areas, and that could be why there's so much like denial about it. Um, if you're the only person around to see it, who's gonna believe you? You know what I mean? Unless you find a like-minded weirdo like me that will believe you. Not many people are gonna believe you. You're gonna sound crazy. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any other urban legend, right? Like, oh, but my a friend of a friend of mine saw Bigfoot, or you know, I mean, whatever else it is, right? So it kind of falls into that same category. There's no solid proof or evidence for any of these except just, you know, word of mouth stories. So,
exactly. And I think another point to bring up, and I see you have the picture up there, is
I do.
a lot of these people are showing like a lot of these kids are like showing up in like old time clothes and stuff. Like, where are they getting these old time clothes? Like, if you can
Yeah,
explain away the contacts and the ride to the next town over, like,
they're also dressed in costume.
right, they're also
And
wearing costume jewelry. Like, get
they're wearing makeup, they're wearing costume jewelry. They've practiced their speech because another common element of these children is their very monotone speech patterns
yes,
and occasionally outdated speech. And so it's just like, all right, you pile like all of these things on top of each other, and it's like, all right, really, like what kid is gonna I mean, well, to be fair, I guess you could probably scare a few people, right? Like the person might not remember every single detail of the encounter, and their mind may fill in some gaps. Uh, so not that it has to be perfect, but I mean, it would still be a lot for a kid to go through to pull something like this off.
yeah, it'd be insane. It it would require a tremendous amount of practice and probably coaching, honestly.
They
Um,
need some, yeah, some acting coaches,
yeah,
you know, to
something, because if you put all of it together, it just sounds too crazy to just explain away so easily. Um,
yeah.
and again, that could come back to, well, maybe they're just a good writer, like maybe they're just a good storyteller. Well, maybe they are, but what if they're not? Like, that's the question. Is everybody's so that's my question, at least, is everybody's wanting to explain it away so easily, but what if they're not wrong? What if there really is, you know, something out there that is taking the form of a child to try and be let in? It's a little creepy to think about, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. It is very creepy. um I don't know. Well, so do you want to talk about we've talked a lot about like what I guess the actual urban legend entails. Like what are the bits and pieces that make this a black-eyed child story, I guess. Do you want to talk about theories of what these children could actually be?
Sure, let's do it. Um, so I think that one of the leading theories, I guess, if you believe in it, is like a demon of some sort of demonic entity.
Yeah, I think
Um,
there's like a top two. There's like top two things of what it could be.
okay,
I think demon is one of them.
okay. What is the other one?
Alien.
Alien. Okay,
Yeah,
I
so
could.
like
Okay,
demon and alien. Because I think that this story really has aspects of like both of those.
right.
So, but let's talk about the demon one first.
Okay, so the reason people think that it's more or it's a demonic thing, um, like we said, it seems like they have a script, right? And it seems like almost like they have a set of rules that they have to follow. Like I said, they have to be let in. Um, they can't
They have
come
to be
in.
given
Right, they have to
permission
be given
to come in.
permission
Yeah.
to be let in. They
Like
can't.
a vampire-esque type of.
Right, like a vampire. So they have a certain set of rules that they have to follow. The black eyes is like a pretty staple. It's like a staple of both demons and aliens, I think. At least common aliens. You know, you see them like the little green men with the black eyes. Um, but yeah, I think it also it's like they show up out of nowhere, you know, and
Yeah, and they vanish
right,
into thin air. So it's sort of like supernatural type powers,
right.
I guess.
It's almost like Supernatural's demons. That's like the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
Is that they like take the form, and it's not even that they take the form. It's like because in Supernatural they don't. They just like possess a body. But whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. Um.
Yes.
So yeah.
I think also the fact that they become very insistent when you deny them access,
Hmm.
also kind of plays into other demon type stories.
Okay.
I don't know if that's something that you are familiar with or
I'm
not.
not familiar with it, but I could believe it.
I mean, I think it's basically like a demon will, even though a demon has certain rules it has to follow, it can get very close to breaking those rules, right?
Right.
So like it'll do whatever a demon will do whatever it takes to get you to do what it wants without overstepping those rules. And so I don't know, that's just something that I've consistently like come across in various demon type stories.
I could make sense. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, for sure. Um, I think that like I think that it it definitely makes sense that they would become insistent when you deny them access. Um,
Mhm.
that they would almost, like you said, they would come very close to crossing that line, uh, and breaking those rules to get what they want. It makes total sense.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about the alien theory?
Sure, I actually really like the alien theory. So, I think kind of different aspects of the black-eyed children that lean more towards the alien side are skin tone. They're always very pale, kind of like a greenish pale. Obviously, again, the eyes, they have no pupils. They're very alien-esque eyes. If, like Tin Man said, you picture that classic sort of like triangle shaped head sort of alien thing. Um, what else? The sort of outdated appearance or speech um, could denote, the alien being unfamiliar with current day, um, you know, human technology, I guess. Um, and I think that's That's kind of where, like, the just sort of the base level description ends
Hmm.
for aliens. Now, the appearing and disappearing, I don't know, maybe they teleport, who
Or they
knows?
could just beam
But
down and beam back up, you know?
yeah, but I think when you dig deeper into the alien side of the story, I'm thinking about one story in particular, and this is one again. Sorry, I keep going back to David Weatherly,
You're
but I
fine.
listened to a bunch of stuff from the book that he wrote. But and I'm trying to find the. I want to like source it if I can. Um, if I can't find it, I'll link to the actual podcast that I listened to where he talks about it in more detail. But basically, it's a story about a woman who actually invited the children into her home.
Hmm.
So, did you hear that one?
No, but I've heard a couple other ones. It might be the same one. I don't know. Um, but we forgot to mention that if you invite them in, usually you have like bad luck afterwards, or you start getting sick. Um,
Yeah.
something I read said it was like some kind of radiation poisoning. Um,
Yeah, exactly. So I think I've only heard this one story and like about actually letting the children into the home. And so
mhm,
I guess, well, I'll kind of put that aside for a second. And I want to point out that this is kind of the number one like question mark for me is whether demon, alien, whatever,
mhm,
why do these creatures want to get inside your home or your car? Like, what is the purpose? And so, as like weird and unnerving as this story is that I'm about to tell you guys, it still just doesn't really make any sense to me.
mhm,
I guess. And so well, we can talk about that in a minute, but so basically, the gist of the story is there's this older couple. They end up letting the children in, and it takes them a while to realize that their eyes are actually like strange. Don't ask me how, but they are invited in. They're like given some water. I think they were like caught out in a snowstorm or something. Maybe they're given hot chocolate, whatever.
mhm,
So once they're let in, some weird things start to happen. The husband's nose starts to bleed. He's never had a nosebleed in his life. He has these like dizzy fainting spells that he's experiencing, and things just get sort of strange. Basically, then the woman realizes that these kids maybe aren't kids. They look really weird. They have jet black eyes, and she's like, why are you here? What are you waiting for? Like, do you have parents? I don't know. Basically they say, our parents will be here soon. Our
mhm.
parents will be here soon. Like, that's the only thing they say.
Right.
And eventually, I guess parents do show up because the kids say, our parents are here. The couple looks outside. There's a black car with two men in all black suits, and then the kids just leave with the
Okay.
two men in the two suits.
Uh huh.
And then after that, the man and woman claim that they had health issues. I think the guy got some kind of cancer, skin cancer, that could only have gotten through what extreme sun exposure or radiation, like you said.
Hmm.
So it's all very odd. I just that story, why were they there? Was it just to make the people sick? The kind of the alien association comes in with the high levels of radiation.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. It's just all really weird. I don't know. I don't
It
know what
is really
your thoughts are
weird.
on it.
It is really weird, and I think okay, so uh, so you asked earlier, like, why do they want to be let in, right? Or why
Yeah.
would they let these kids in? I think it goes with like how many times in folklore and and like lore of demons and vampires and stuff are they like you have to let them in, you have to give them permission, and the
Mhm.
reason they want to be let in is because once you let them in, they can continue to come back.
Oh.
Like they don't need to be let in again because once you give them permission once, it's for life.
So
Um,
maybe it's like if we're going off the alien story, then the aliens would have access to this house whenever they wanted for human experiments or whatever
whatever they
aliens
want.
do.
It could be doing
Organ
weird, yeah,
harvesting.
organ harvesting, weird experiments on the humans. Granted, they're old. You could see. I, I mean, they could see how old people are, like old humans are, so they could better replicate them. I don't know, but
I guess that makes sense. So if they're aliens, they get let inside the house, the adult aliens or whatever, I don't know, come in, they are, like, aware of the house and its location. They've, like, geo-mapped it, well, whatever, I don't know, and they're like, "Alright, this is a house that we can just do whatever we want at for however
mhm.
long."
so so let me give you this idea on what these things could be. Right? What about some sort of like doppelganger? Right?
Uh,
So they
okay.
they come in, they have to be let in. They come in and they make you sick, and then you die. But since you gave them permission, they can now like take over your life and they become you. Um,
Mm.
and then they can like wreak more havoc amongst the world because then they're like out in the world. They're not like confined to focusing on being let in somewhere because they already have like a base of operations, so to speak. Um,
Mhm. Mm.
I don't know. That's just a thought.
So it's more like demon possession.
Demon possession or like invasion of the body snatchers kind of thing, like
Yeah.
some weird alien life form that wants to just
Mhm.
take over the human race. Dude, I'm going off the deep end on this one, but I'm just saying maybe
It could be so many things.
it could be
Nobody
so many
knows.
things.
I mean, I think there are a number of theories that you could come up with based on the basic description of these stories. So, right, the appearance, the behavior, I guess the few stories, the single I don't know if there's more than just this one story about letting the children in, but I mean, you could also then claim, potentially high levels of radiation when
Mhm.
in contact. Um, so I don't know, or bad radiation and or bad luck, other health issues. I don't know. So I mean, it's a very wide range of descriptors that you could really apply to a lot of different theories.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that is one of the reasons that this is stuck around so long and it hasn't like faded into obscurity and like no one talks about black-eyed children. Um, is because it is so many different things that it could be, and no one knows like the one thing that it most likely is.
Mhm.
Um, and then, not to mention, you have cases of this popping up all over the world instead of just one remote area.
Yeah.
So it's already beaten the aliens because they apparently only show up in America and
Wait.
Texas. Aliens,
Yeah,
you ever notice that aliens only show up in like South Texas or like Nevada? Like
I don't know if that's true.
it's not 100% true, but it seems like those are the majority of the cases. It
I'm gonna look
seems
this
like
up.
it.
Worldwide aliens. I don't know. Well, that's something maybe to talk about another day.
Another
But
day.
um but yeah, it's there are cases not only around the world, but also
Under the
throughout
water. No, I'm
history.
kidding.
On land, sea, and air. No, also throughout time. So like we were talking about earlier, it's not just this explosion of stories from the mid 90s, but um going back to David Weatherly,
Mhm.
who put a lot of research and thought into this book and these cases. Um, there have been reported stories of similar cases in the past. And what's really cool, or what I thought was cool about his process is when you talk about the present day black-eyed kids, there is an acronym that goes along with it. The BEKs
Mhm.
is what they're called. So when he was doing historical research on reported strange cases, you kind of have to tweak the way you're thinking about them, right? So instead of obviously BEK is a current phrase for this phenomenon, but that's not always the case.
Right.
So it's more about looking at the details of each case and putting things together. And sometimes things might be similar, but not exact. And so, I mean, he was able to find quite a number of previous cases that happened before the mid 90s.
Mhm.
So I thought that was interesting.
It is. It is really interesting because then, like you said, it's not just a boom of, modern things that would. I If it was just from the 1990s until now that we had heard about this, I would probably chalk it up more to a hoax or a creepypasta, like you said.
Mhm.
Um, but given the fact that it goes back, I think I saw somewhere that's like the 1800s is as far as like 1880 or something like that.
Mhm.
There's like cases dating back to then. Um, that's a pretty good chunk of time. Um,
Mhm.
so if that's honestly the case, that's something more than just an internet hoax. That's something more than just
Mhm.
a boom on the internet because there's a forum post somewhere.
Yeah. It's to me it's definitely telling that there could be there's something larger, something more like menacing or like kind of ancient evil about this phenomenon,
Right.
which makes it creepier, I think.
Yeah. There's
Um
there's a just sorry to cut you off. There's a
no, you're good.
podcast that I used to listen to a while back called Beyond the Darkness, and they did an episode on the Black Eyed Kids, and it's really good. I actually sent you the link in Discord because it is legitly it is like it was probably the first or second time that I ever heard about it, but
Mhm.
um, it was the people that they have on there were actual people that experienced the Black Eyed Kids, and they
Oh,
go
that's cool.
into. I'll actually post the link in chat if anybody wants to listen to it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Um, but they actually go into like they bring them on and have them tell their story, and it's definitely chilling to hear them talk about it.
Yeah. Huh.
So
I'm definitely interested in listening to that because like all I heard were stories of people who
yeah,
like encountered them. That's really cool.
yeah, it's really interesting hearing like firsthand accounts rather than like you said, like a friend of a friend. You know,
Yeah.
the you know Sally next door's hairdresser told me this story. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to hear that. I want to hear the firsthand stuff.
Yeah. Um kind of going back to the ancient evil thing, I was watching a video that was talking about not necessarily children, but sort of this uh I guess the existence of stories that specifically had to do with the creatures or other things with similar eyes. And sort of how this I don't know. It was I guess it was talking about the fact that maybe throughout history, the black-eyed children were known as different things, or they've changed and adapted to fit whatever the current uh human trend is. I don't know, in like mythology. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but maybe like the current human consciousness, whatever they see as, spooky or threatening, then
Mhm.
that's like the shape that this black-eyed entity takes. I think they were referencing the fae or fairies
Ooh, okay.
and like like Irish folklore,
Yeah.
because apparently they had these pitch black eyes. And so, like, babies would be checked when they
Like
were born to make sure
changelings?
that they didn't. Yeah, yeah, like,
Dude,
um,
have you ever
so that
looked
would
into changelings? That is
no.
some creepy, creepy shit. Holy crap. Like,
I think I
holy
know, like,
crap.
I have, like, a very level knowledge of changeling.
So, like the gist of a changeling is that these fairy folk um, will send the changeling in the place of like a human baby, and they will like raise this baby as their own, and like the changeling is like it turns into this like weird creature if the parents feed like okay, have you seen I'm sure you have Spirited Away,
Yeah.
right? Where she has to like eat something from the other world or whatever, the other dimension
Yeah.
thing in
Yeah.
order to like turn into something like them. Like it's like the same thing. Like they have to eat like 3 or 4 times or something like that before they turn into this weird creature, and that's the only way. But if they do it, if the changeling turns into this weird creature or whatever, the human child's lost forever. They can't get it back, and
Hmm.
it is top tier creepy shit. Like like
Interesting.
it is really creepy. Definitely look into that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I have a very, like, base level knowledge of them, but that's definitely something that I wanna look into more.
Yeah, the fairy folk of Irish folklore is creepy.
Well, yeah, and that's like, I don't know, the speaker was trying to like create this parallel between, ancient fae stories where they were described as having these like pitch black eyes and the black-eyed children of today, and is it the same entity? Like maybe it's just this force that changes over time to fit humanity's collective view of, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
Like,
completely
so I don't know,
understand.
it's kind of a cool thing to think about if you, think of the black-eyed children, or you take more of the demon route, I guess, instead of the alien route.
Yeah, I mean, what if another thought, along kind of along that same line is what if it's not a fate, part of the fate folk? What if it's not a demon? What if it's not, anything like that? And it's just something that is there that over time has evolved. Like it's trying to keep up with, like you said, like
Mhm,
the current human conscience and everything, but maybe it's like lagging behind, or maybe it can only come out so every so often.
mhm.
I don't know. That's really weird.
Yeah, it would be interesting to look up other urban legends or folklore around, sort of this black-eyed look and see if there are stories that span across between like the 1800s to now, like what
Mhm.
kind of black-eyed stories are there?
I'll look into it.
But
I'll
yeah,
look
so
into
just
it.
something interesting to think about, I guess. I still personally like the alien theory. Just one more alien thing to throw out there too. One other thought was that the black-eyed children were a alien human hybrid.
I
That
heard that,
aliens
yeah.
were, I guess, like experimenting with, or like I don't know. It was like a whole there's a whole thing into that. But anyway, another interesting alien tidbit.
Yeah. I don't know.
So
All I'm
I
saying
think
is if you're out there listening and you're a black-eyed child and you want to be let in somewhere, just come to the Midwest. Someone will let you in. I promise. I promise. They'll let you in.
there's that nice.
Oh yeah, we're that nice. I almost got hit by a car at work the other day. Like I was walking through a parking lot and I almost got hit by a car and I was just like, "Oh, don't hit me." And I like waved at the lady and I just like kept walking. Like like nobody we don't care. Like
Yeah. Well, there you go. For all the demons out there on the net listening to our podcast.
yeah.
Just keep that in mind.
Just like don't since I gave you that hint, don't come to my house. That's it. That's all I ask.
Anyone's house but Tin Man's house.
Right. Exactly.
Or his historian said he'll keep that in mind.
That's fine. Or you can stop by. That's fine.
All
I
right,
don't have anything
awesome. Well,
else.
yeah, no, I don't have any more thoughts.
I
Black-eyed
think
kids.
I think it was an interesting topic. I think that
Yeah.
we made it a lot more interesting than I was kind of anticipating it being.
I was a little bit worried because like I said, I thought it was base level.
Right.
But I was pleasantly surprised that there's a little more to it
Yeah.
than what I first thought. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's fun. Next time we meet will be the 29th,
Mhm.
if that works for you, as long as we can, as long as that works with our schedules and stuff. Um, and I think we had said that we were going to talk about some sort of paranormal stuff, since it's like 2 days before Halloween, um, and this is October and Spooktober and all that fun internet stuff.
Yes.
So that'll be fun when we get to talk about that stuff.
Yes. Instead of existential or conspiracy related dread, we're now talking about paranormal related dread.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think ghosts and the paranormal are on our list, but if you guys have any other interesting spooky topics that you'd like to throw out there, I definitely like to take a look. Maybe
For
we can
sure.
incorporate a few different topics into that stream.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
just let us know.
yeah. Let us know either in Biscuit's Discord, the Trailblazers Discord, since the Scrapyard is no more. Sad days. On Twitter, you can reach me at TinMan135. Or you can hit up the TinBiscuit Reviews Discord, or not Discord, Twitter at TinBiscuitR.
Yep.
So, other than that, guys, I have nothing else.
Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you very much, Tin Man,
I
for
appreciate
another
you hanging out with me.
informative and spooky show.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yep, me too.
All right, have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.